Hey there, this is the first time I've ever done this. I still have a new channel. I don't get a lot of viewers, and most of my viewers are people who agree with me. That's fine. It's nice to talk with and meet people you do agree with, but I have one or two people who don't agree with me, and recently I've been getting a lot of comments on my conversation with a liberal video by somebody who I'm assuming identifies as liberal, at least they're pro-government, and the comment section being what it is, I'd rather just make a video than keep typing forever. So this guy Bulgar Now yesterday posted a comment on my video saying I assume the conversation with the liberal video is like, I don't know, 18 minutes long, and talked about quite a few things. But he types, how does reform equal takeover? According to that, all refs control the outcome to every game in the NBA, NFL, MLB, etc. I assume he's referring to the government takeover of healthcare, or Obamacare. And he's comparing, he's saying that reform does not, he's implying that reform does not equal takeover, and that this is calling Obamacare a takeover is akin to calling referees, saying that they control games. Now, there's a couple issues with this. One, I don't disagree that reform does not necessarily mean takeover. Absolutely, you can have a reform that doesn't mean a takeover. However, I would hesitate to characterize the Obamacare as a reform. Reform does not mean that you just do anything. When they passed the Patriot Act, that was not really a reform of our legal code. When they passed No Child Left Behind, which I'm sure you're probably against, as am I, that was not a reform of the education system. That was a government action, and not every government action is a reform. For something to be a reform, you have to analyze the situation, you have to diagnose the problem, if there is one, and then you have to approach it from that angle. That did not happen with healthcare. In fact, this never happens with the government. The government assumes that every problem is to be solved by more government. And so healthcare, the retort was always, it's too expensive, it's too expensive, it's too expensive. You can see Nancy Pelosi, you can see even the Republicans, oh, healthcare is too expensive. And they are right, healthcare was too expensive, and it is too expensive. It's much more expensive than it should be and that it would be. But then they never ask the next question, why is it so expensive? And when I ask people this, when I ask liberals this, they give usually one answer, and that is that it's because of greed and the profit motive. Of course, there's a big problem with this, because greed and profit motive is present in every industry. Okay, the people who sell you toothpicks, or Burger King, or every little 90-cent trinket you can buy at the store, all those people make those things to make money, and because they're greedy. Computers, cell phones, all of it. And so why are their prices either staying the same or going down, whereas the prices in medical care are going up? If you're just going to say it's greed or profit, that is not accurately, sufficiently explained. And it's pretty clear that government action has raised the cost of healthcare for a number of reasons. A, they formed a cartel of doctors by giving them licensing, which was not lobbied for by consumers. Patients who had been wronged by a derelict doctor, who had maybe the wrong arm cut off or something, did not go to Congress and say, please regulate the doctors, we need more quality, the doctors are hurting us, we need the government to step. No, the people who went to the government were the doctors themselves. And their rationale is well known, and it was, we want to restrict how many people can be doctors so that doctors can charge more. Which is the same reason every industry goes to the government to get regulated. And that's how it always works, by the way. And if you don't believe me, I would recommend that you read the book, The Triumph of Conservatism by Gabriel Kolko, who is a Marxist. He is not a free market person like myself. He is a Marxist, but he correctly points out that almost all regulation in the United States historically is brought about by the industry being regulated. They go to the government and they use it as a form of what you would call rent-seeking or regulatory capture. They use government regulations to quash, destroy, or restrict their competition so that they can charge more. And they always do it in the name of customer safety. And empirically, it doesn't even help customer safety. We have records, for instance, where one state will pass licensure and another state will not on a certain industry. And there's no, the information is that the state that passes the licensure or the regulations don't have higher quality or safer goods at all. So there's that, and then there's also, of course, the doctors is only one restriction. There's all kinds of restrictions: how many people can go to medical schools, how many medical schools there can be, how many hospitals there can be, what the tasks every person can do. Doctors are required to do everything, even though nurses could probably do a lot of it. How long it takes to become a doctor, the training involved. Then there's, of course, the government paying. When the government diverts rivers of government money into an industry, it will bid up the cost. So if tomorrow Obama said that it is the Americans have a right to riding lawnmowers, because nobody should be forced to walk and push a lawnmower. And so now the government will give, low interest loans or even grants to anybody who wants to get one. The price of riding lawnmowers would not stay the same. It would go up enormously. And if you're receiving the subsidy, it doesn't matter to you. But if you're someone who doesn't receive the subsidy, the fact that the price is going up is going to bid you out of the market. So I really don't want to buy a riding lawnmower, but say I did, but I didn't receive this government subsidy. Right now, if they cost $2,000 after this program, in a year or two, they could end up costing $5,000 or $6,000. Suddenly, they're too expensive. Why? Because the John Deere wants money and they're greedy? No. I mean, they are greedy and they want money, but that's not what bid up the price. It's the rivers of government money. And that is what Social Security and Medicare have been doing for years. And if you were receiving those programs, you weren't paying the cost. But if you weren't on those programs, they bid up the cost of health care. And then, of course, there's the subsidy to insurance companies. Insurance companies have been subsidized since World War II. That's when the use of insurance became so common. During World War II, the government imposed wage controls. They put maximum amounts that you could pay your employees. Now, employers still need to compete for labor, and so they would give employees, rather than higher wages, they would give them perks. And eventually, like they might give them a car, or they might give them free groceries or whatever. But the most popular perk ended up being health care. You wouldn't get a higher wage, but you get a health care. And the reason was that this didn't count as a wage, and then the government did not tax these benefits, so you paid less income taxes if a certain percentage went into an insurance program. Now, while I'm not against not being taxed or something, it does distort the market, because then all of a sudden it's incentivized to put money into insurance programs, similar to the stock market. Usually stocks and dividends that you make on stock purchases are taxed a lot less than money you put in the bank. So you're incentivized to do that, and so more people put money in the stock market than they otherwise would, and more people put money into insurance. And of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with insurance per se, but when it gets subsidized like that, it will cause people to not shop around, because you have third-party payer, and so people no longer are looking for the best deal when it comes to medical care, which they used to do. So anyway, I point all this out to say that's why all those reasons are valid reasons why the cost of healthcare has increased. All of them are. I would love to hear you deny this and say, no, none of those things raised the cost of healthcare. The cost of healthcare went up because the government wasn't involved, or some idiotic thing like that. Anyway, so I would say that addressing that would be reform, saying, hey, we need to maybe allow people to buy insurance across state lines. Maybe we shouldn't have so many regulations. Maybe we shouldn't have a cartel for doctors and hospitals and medical care. And maybe we shouldn't have rivers of government money bidding up the price and determining what kind of care is provided. After all, to go to another, well, I'll come to that later. Just because the government does something does not make it a reform. And what the government did was not a reform. It was more of what it's already been doing. And yes, it is a takeover. Now, it was already half taken over. I'm not somebody who believes that the healthcare system was fine to begin with. And I'm not someone who believes that it wasn't already largely government controlled. Like I said in a comment to you, it is almost 100% regulated by the government, and it was half paid for. And now it's, instead of half, it's more like 85. So there's that. The second part of that little quote is to compare the government to a referee in a sporting game. Now, I'm not an expert on athletics. Every once in a while, I'll hear somebody who seems to know what they're talking about claiming that there are actually biases among refs, that they are incentivized sometimes to do certain things. For instance, if there's a game, if there's a playoff series where it's maybe a best of 7 or something, like in the NBA or the NHL, sometimes the refs are incentivized to make there be more games, because then the teams, the franchise will get more money, and so it's possible maybe the refs, will try and help one team win so that they'll go to Game 7 instead of losing after Game 4 or whatever. But assuming now that the refs are, some kind of objective third party who just make people play the rules, which essentially they're supposed to be, and probably they are, although I'm not, like I said, I'm not an expert on sports. The government is not that. And this was the main point I tried to convey in my comments. I said, hey, the government is not some objective third party, all right? It's an active participant, and it picks winners and losers. Like in Medicare and Medicaid, they don't just pay whatever anybody wants. They don't pay for every kind of procedure, and they only pay certain amounts for procedures. They decide whether certain kinds of surgeries are okay or not. They don't just say, hey, you think you need this surgery, your doctor thinks you need this surgery, you get... No. Whatever... They'll only pay for certain things, and they'll only pay certain amounts. That distorts the market, all right? There are doctors who will not care for certain people because what those people need is something that Medicare and Medicaid will not pay for. Or they specialize in only things Medicare and Medicaid will pay for. When the government is paying for something, then they're, and there again, they're giving more money to certain doctors, to certain hospitals than to others. So they're not objectively just helping everybody.